Man, let me tell y'all something. I had an experience this Ramadan that I did not expect. I mean, not even a little bit. See, I've heard people talk about fasting before. Folks say it's about discipline, about patience, about faith. I've heard all that. But hearing about something and actually doing it yourself, oh, that's two completely different things. That's like the difference between watching somebody swim on TV and somebody pushing you straight into the deep end of the pool. Now imagine me waking up before the sun comes up, sitting there in the quiet early morning, eating a small meal before the fast begins. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, Steve, you about to try something new today. Let's see what this is really about. The house is quiet, the world is quiet, and there's this peaceful feeling in the air that I can't quite explain. And I remember thinking, this already feels different from a normal day. Because usually when we wake up, our minds jump straight into the hustle, emails, schedules, meetings, money, problems, all the noise of life. But that morning was different. That morning was calm, intentional, like my soul was being asked to slow down before the day even started. Now the fast begins when the sun rises, and let me tell you something. At first, my mind was focused on the obvious part, the food part, the water part. I'm thinking, all right, Steve, you can do this. Just get through the day. But something interesting started happening as the hours went by. See, fasting during Ramadan ain't just about not eating or drinking. That's the surface level. That's the part people see from the outside. The real fast is happening inside your mind and your heart. Because Muslims don't just fast from food, they fast from negativity, from anger, from gossip, from bad habits, from letting your tongue run wild. And I realized real quick, that part might be even harder than skipping lunch. Because once you start paying attention to your words, your thoughts, your reactions, you start noticing things about yourself that you usually ignore. You realize how quickly you get irritated, how easily you complain, how often your mind drifts toward things that don't really matter. And man, around midday, I caught myself about to say something sarcastic to somebody, just a quick little comment, something I might normally say without thinking. And then I stopped. I literally stopped mid-sentence. Because suddenly I remembered, wait a minute, Steve, you fasting. Not just your stomach, your character too. And that moment right there hit me harder than any hunger pain. Because I realized fasting is like holding up a mirror to your soul. It shows you parts of yourself that you didn't even know were there. And instead of distracting yourself with food, entertainment, or the constant noise of life, you're forced to sit with your own thoughts. You're forced to reflect. But the moment that really changed something in me came later, during the prayers. See, Muslims pray 5 times a day, and during Ramadan, those prayers feel different. They feel deeper. I stood there, quiet, bowing my head, and for the first time that day, I felt the hunger, the silence, the patience, all of it coming together in one moment. And I started thinking about how often we move through life without stopping to actually connect with God. We pray sometimes, sure, but usually we're rushing. Our minds are somewhere else. We're already thinking about the next thing we got to do. But when you're fasting, when your body is empty and your heart is focused, something changes. Your prayers slow down. Your mind quiets down. And suddenly you feel present. And I'm standing there thinking to myself, man, is this what people mean when they say fasting cleans the soul? Because it really felt like something inside me was getting clearer. Like all the distractions were slowly peeling away. The hunger reminded me how dependent we are on blessings we usually ignore. The silence reminded me how loud my life normally is. And the prayers reminded me that the purpose of fasting isn't to suffer. It's to wake up spiritually. It's to reset your heart. By the time the afternoon came around, I realized something surprising. My mind wasn't thinking about food nearly as much anymore. Instead, I was thinking about gratitude, about patience, about how much of life we rush through without appreciating it. And I started understanding why millions of people around the world look forward to Ramadan every year. Because it's not just a fast, it's a reset for your soul. And that realization right there, that was the moment my perspective started to change. So now the afternoon starts rolling in, and I'm not going to lie to you, this is when the fast really started talking to me. See, the morning had this calm, almost peaceful feeling to it. You wake up early, you eat before sunrise, you pray, and there's a sense of purpose in the air. But by the time that sun starts climbing high in the sky and the day is in full motion, that's when your body starts sending you messages. Your stomach growls a little, your throat gets dry, and normally, on any regular day, you wouldn't even think about it. You just grab a snack, take a sip of water, keep moving. But this time, there was no quick fix. And what fascinated me was how that small discomfort started opening a door inside my mind. Because when you take away all those little comforts we rely on every few hours, you suddenly realize how much of our daily routine is built around satisfying ourselves instantly. We hungry, eat. We bored, snack. We stressed, grab something sweet or salty and keep going. We don't sit with discomfort anymore. The modern world don't teach that. It teaches the opposite. Get what you want immediately. But fasting doesn't allow that. Fasting says sit with it. And let me tell you, sitting with it started teaching me things about myself I wasn't expecting. Around mid-afternoon, I remember just pausing for a moment. The day had slowed down in my mind. My body was feeling the fast, sure, but my thoughts were somewhere deeper now. I started thinking about people who live with hunger every single day, not because they chose to fast, but because they don't have food on the table. That thought alone hit me harder than the hunger itself. Because when you choose to fast, you know the sunset is coming. You know there's a meal waiting at the end of the day. But millions of people out there don't have that guarantee. And fasting made me feel a small piece of that reality, just enough to shake something inside my heart. Then something else started happening that I didn't expect. My mind got quieter. You ever notice how noisy life is? I'm not just talking about traffic or phones or social media. I'm talking about the noise inside your own head, the constant thinking, worrying, planning, reacting. But when you fast, especially during Ramadan, that noise starts calming down because the whole rhythm of the day changes. Muslims pause throughout the day to pray, to reflect, to remember God. And I found myself doing the same thing, stepping away from the rush, taking a moment to breathe, to think about life in a way I normally don't. One prayer in particular during the afternoon really stuck with me. I stood there quietly, going through the motions of the prayer, bowing, placing my head on the ground. And something about that posture hit me in a way I hadn't expected. Because when your forehead touches the ground like that, it's a reminder of humility. It's a reminder that no matter how successful you think you are, no matter how big your name gets, no matter how much money you make, at the end of the day, you're still a human being standing before God. That moment humbled me. It reminded me that fasting isn't just about controlling your body. It's about softening your heart. And as the afternoon stretched on, I started noticing another change happening inside me. My reactions were slower. My patience was stronger. Usually if something irritates me during a busy day, my mind jumps straight into frustration mode. But that day felt different because fasting made me more aware of my words, more aware of my tone, more aware of how I respond to people. I found myself choosing calm instead of irritation, choosing silence instead of unnecessary comments. And that right there showed me something powerful. Fasting isn't just about what you stop eating. It's about who you start becoming. By the time the sun began moving toward the horizon, something inside me had shifted. The hunger was still there, sure. My throat was dry. My body was ready for that first sip of water. But my mind and my soul were feeling something completely new. There was this quiet anticipation in the air, not just excitement for food, but gratitude, real gratitude, the kind you don't feel when you're eating all day long without thinking about it. And that's when I realized something important. The fast was slowly changing the way I looked at the simplest blessings in life. A glass of water wasn't just a glass of water anymore. A date wasn't just a piece of fruit. They were gifts waiting at the end of a day, filled with patience, reflection, and prayer. And what happened when the sun finally dipped below that horizon, man, that moment right there might have been the most powerful part of the whole experience. And then that moment finally came. The sun started dipping down toward the horizon, that warm orange glow spreading across the sky. And I could feel the anticipation building. Now let me tell you something. On a normal day, sunset don't mean much to most people. It's just the end of the workday, another evening rolling in, maybe time to turn on the TV or scroll on your phone. But when you've been fasting all day, when your stomach's been empty and your throat's been dry, sunset suddenly becomes something special. It becomes a moment you've been waiting for all day long. And I'm sitting there thinking, all right, Steve, the time is almost here. But what surprised me wasn't just the hunger, it was the feeling in my heart. Because when Muslims break their fast, they don't just dive straight into a big meal like somebody who skipped lunch and is trying to make up for it. No. There's a pause first. There's a prayer. There's gratitude. People sit there quietly, often with just a simple date and a glass of water in front of them, waiting for that exact moment when the fast officially ends. And I remember looking at that small date sitting in my hand, and I thought to myself, man, this tiny little thing about to feel like the greatest meal on earth. And when the call to prayer finally came signaling that the sun had set, I took that first sip of water, and I'm telling you right now, that sip hit my soul different. I've drank water my whole life, thousands of glasses of it, probably millions of sips. But never once did it taste like that moment. Because suddenly I understood something. When you remove something from your life for a while, even something simple, you start appreciating it in a way you never did before. That water wasn't just water anymore. It was relief. It was gratitude. It was a reminder of how blessed we are every single day and don't even notice it. And that date, just one little date, tasted better than some 5-star restaurant meals I've had in my life. And that's when it really clicked for me. Fasting resets your appreciation for life. But the evening didn't stop there. See, Ramadan nights are something special too. After breaking the fast, people gather for prayers called Taraweeh. Now imagine a mosque filled with people standing shoulder to shoulder. Everyone who spent the entire day fasting together now, standing in prayer together. The room is calm. The recitation of the Quran fills the air. And even if you don't understand every word being recited, you can feel the atmosphere. There's a peace in that room that's hard to explain. It's like everyone there is sharing the same purpose, the same focus, the same moment of reflection. I remember standing there during those prayers, listening to the recitation and thinking about the entire day I had just experienced. From that quiet early morning meal before sunrise, to the hunger and reflection during the afternoon, to that powerful moment of breaking the fast. And I started realizing that fasting isn't really about food at all. Food is just a doorway. The real journey is happening inside your heart. Because throughout that day, something had been happening to my mind and my soul without me even realizing it. My patience had grown stronger. My gratitude had grown deeper. My awareness of God had become clearer. And for the first time in a long time, my life had slowed down enough for me to actually notice those things. You see, most of us are running through life so fast that we don't even hear our own thoughts anymore. We're chasing success, chasing comfort, chasing the next thing. But fasting puts the brakes on all that. It forces you to slow down and look inward. And standing there in that night prayer, shoulder to shoulder with people who had been on the same spiritual journey that day, I felt something I didn't expect, a sense of connection. Not just connection to the people around me, but connection to God. Because when you spend an entire day controlling your desires, watching your words, reflecting on your actions, and then you end that day in prayer, something inside you feels lighter, clearer. That night I went home thinking, man, this fast didn't just change how I look at food. It changed how I look at myself. And what I realized the next morning when it was time to wake up again before sunrise and do it all over, that's when I understood the real power of Ramadan. And the next morning, when that alarm went off before the sun came up again, I just lay there for a second staring at the ceiling. Because the day before had already done something to me. It had shifted something in my mind, something in my heart. And I remember thinking, Steve, you're actually about to do this again. Now, normally, if you told somebody they had to go another full day without food or water, they might groan, roll over, hit the snooze button, and say, man, forget all that. But this time, it felt different. It didn't feel like something I had to do. It felt like something I wanted to experience again. Because once you start seeing what fasting does to your mind and your soul, you start realizing it's not deprivation, it's transformation. See, the first day opened my eyes, but by the time I was waking up for the second fast, something deeper had already started growing inside me. I started understanding that fasting is like a reset button for your entire life. We spend most of the year chasing comfort. That's the modern lifestyle. Everything is designed to make life easier, faster, more convenient. Food is everywhere. Entertainment is everywhere. Distractions are everywhere. And after a while, you get so used to constant comfort that you forget what discipline even feels like. But fasting brings discipline back into the picture. It reminds you that you're capable of controlling your desires instead of letting them control you. And that lesson right there, man, that's powerful. Because once you learn how to control one desire, like hunger, it starts spilling over into other parts of your life. Suddenly you realize you can control your anger a little better. You can control your words a little better. You can resist temptations that used to pull you in every direction. It's like your mind becomes stronger than your impulses. And in a world where people are constantly reacting to everything, that kind of control is rare. But the biggest change I noticed wasn't even about discipline. It was about perspective. See, fasting made me start looking at life differently. When you go a whole day feeling hunger and thirst, you start appreciating the blessings you normally overlook. A meal becomes special. A glass of water becomes precious. Even the act of sitting down and eating with other people becomes meaningful. And it made me realize something about the modern world we're living in. We got more than any generation before us, but somehow we appreciate it less. We got refrigerators full of food, but we complain about what we're eating. We got clean water at the turn of a faucet, but we barely think twice about it. We got comfort everywhere, but our hearts still feel restless. And fasting shines a light on that contradiction. It reminds you that gratitude doesn't come from having more. It comes from pausing long enough to recognize what you already have. Another thing that really stayed with me was the spiritual awareness. Because during Ramadan, it ain't just the fasting during the day. It's the prayers, the reflection, the moments of quiet where you actually think about your relationship with God. And let me tell you something. In today's fast-paced world, those moments are rare. Most of us are too busy running from one thing to the next to slow down and look inward. But fasting forces you to do that. It creates space in your day where you actually think about your purpose, your actions, your character. And I started realizing that this is why Ramadan means so much to so many people. It's not just a religious ritual. It's a spiritual recharge. It's a time when people reconnect with God, reconnect with their values, reconnect with the things that actually matter. Families gather together. Communities pray together. People give more charity. Hearts soften. Patience grows. It's like the whole atmosphere shifts towards something better. And by the time I had gone through those days of fasting, reflection, prayer, and gratitude, I found myself sitting there one night thinking, man, I get it now. I get why millions of people around the world look forward to Ramadan every year. Because for 1 month, the world slows down just enough for people to remember who they really are and what really matters. Fasting changed something in me. It reminded me that the body isn't the boss. The soul is supposed to be. It reminded me that gratitude grows when comfort pauses for a moment. And most importantly, it reminded me that sometimes the greatest transformation doesn't come from gaining something new. It comes from temporarily letting something go. And that right there is what fasting did to my mind and my soul.